We have 1 minute left, so everyone come to the venue, please. We'll start the IFEZ Forum soon. Let's take a seat. Everyone come to the venue. The IFEZ Forum will start soon. It's 3 o'clock. Let's have a seat. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming today. I'm Mia Hemily, part of expert support team in IFEZ. Thank you for attending and watching the IFEZ Forum about improving the daily lives of international residents in IFEZ. The forum is being broadcast live on the Global Center's YouTube channel. Today's perform will start with the performance of a traditional Korean musical performance. The performance team called Ensemble the Ryu in Art Foray. We'll play 2 songs. The first song is called 신 한강수 타령, and the second is River Tango. Let's listen to beautiful music composed of Korean traditional instruments. I can't believe no one danced in tango music. Did you all enjoy? Yes. Let's give it a big hands to the performers. Thank you so much. Now, let me introduce the participants of the forum. First, Won-jae Lee, the Commissioner of IFEZ. Roinder Wilson, the moderator and the professor of George Mason University, Korea. And two speakers, Gregory Hill, the Chief Administrative Officer and the Dean of Faculty at Utah University Asia Campus. Baimi Soladisu, the Chief Business Officer of George Mason University, Korea. And we have 5 panelists. Sejun Kim, the Director of General Investment Inducement in IFEZ. Queen Murakawa, International Student in Fashion Institution of Technology. Emma Nakai. And Christina Arger are here for the forum. Thank you. First, the commissioner will give his welcome remark. Please welcome him.
Good afternoon, everyone. Nice to meet you all. I'm Won-jae Lee, the Commissioner of IFEZ. I'm pleased to hold the first forum about the topic of improving the daily lives of foreign residents. Especially, this forum is the first forum to be held on ways to improve foreign residential conditions, and I think it is meaningful in that foreign residents directly present and discuss. Thank you for your participation in this forum as a speaker, moderator, and panelist for preparing, despite your busy schedule. Due to COVID-19, we offer IFEZ Global Center's YouTube channel to watch this forum for those who cannot attend the offline events. I hope many people are watching it through the channel now. As you may know, this year marks the 17th anniversary of the opening of the IFEZ. IFEZ has achieved rapid development over the past 17 years. There are 15 international organizations, including GCF. The global campus opened in 2012, and the 5 prestigious foreign universities have been established, and Chadwick and the Dalton International Schools are also gaining national fame. By attracting high-tech industries such as bio, ICT, aviation, logistics, and tourism, more than 3,000 companies are moving in, and 146 foreign investees companies are operating their business. Currently, it continues to grow into an international city with the population of 350,000 local people and 6,000 expats living in Songdo, Yeongjong, and the Cheongna area. In order to develop into a global business hub for IFEZ, I think it's very important to create a residential environment where foreigners can live conveniently and safely, as well as attracting investment and creating an advantageous business environment. To this end, the IFEZ Authority has been promoting various projects to expand living infrastructure, such as housing, transportation, culture, environment, and medical services, and promote languages, communication, and support settlement. To solve the language barrier, we open Korean language class for free and provide English translation service to offer English announcement over the loudspeaker and the announcement board. It has expanded to 22 apartment buildings. We also make any effort to help understand Korean culture through various events such as traditional cultural experiences, historic tours, food courses, global village festival, and charity events. Recently, we have implemented a project to attach the English signs to pharmacies in Songdo. In December, we also pushed ahead with a project to certify global customer-friendly restaurants. Last month, the IFEZ Community Consultative Committee was formed by combining of foreign communities, which may be called ICCC. We expect the ICCC to collect the difficulties faced by the foreigners in a more comprehensive manner and to take more active actions in relation to improve foreigners' residential environment. Today, we expect Gregory Hill, the CAO of Utah University Asia Campus, and Bemi Soladishu, the CBO of George Mason University Korea, to make good presentations based on your experience in IFEZ. I'd like to give special thanks to you. Also, the panelists were selected by people from various cultures, period of residence, and professional backgrounds. So please discuss various opinions to improve the residential environment. IFEZ Authority conducts an annual survey of residential conditions for foreigners and they promote improvement plan, but I think there are still many inconveniences for foreigners. We will actively reflect the opinions raised during today's presentation and discussions in promoting projects to improve foreign environment conditions. Did you enjoy the pre-performance? Among the two beautiful songs you just heard, the second song, the River Tango, was played by a haegeum, a traditional Korean music instrument. It is a combination of Western music and Korean instruments. Haegeum is known to be especially well harmonized with other instruments. If foreigners and Koreans communicate with each other, also understand the culture and respect each other in IFEZ, I think the life in IFEZ will be much more satisfying, and IFEZ will be able to take a more closer to the global city. Speaking of my personal experiences, I have also experienced difficulties in settling down while working abroad several times. Language barriers, lifestyle, and cultural differences are among them, but I remember that the consideration and the communication with the local people was a great help. From now on, IFEZ Authority will keep working with the foreigners' settlement and help ease the difficulties faced by the residents' processes. Also, we will work with you to make the IFEZ develop into a global city where diverse people and cultures coexist and grow. Please give us a lot of attention and cooperation. Lastly, I wish you all to stay healthy and happiness. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner, for your speech. As the Commissioner said, I hope IFEZ will get great opinions about the residential environment for foreigners in order to become an international city. The members of the forum, please come to the stage for a group photo. We will announce the speech by Gregory Hill right after the group photo. By Gregory Hill, the CAO and Dean of Faculty at Utah University Asia Campus, will give his speech about thriving in IFEZ. Please come to days for their speech.
여러분 안녕하십니까. Thank you very much and good afternoon. Commissioner Lee, thank you so much for the invitation and for all the great work that you're doing for IFEZ. I just want to follow up on your comment before we get into my official talk that my family and I are currently taking advantage of the Korean cooking classes online. And we're excited to learn to cook with gochujang tonight, I think. So I hope you others are doing that as well. So in the Hill household, in our household, our motto is, it's all part of the adventure. Whether we're talking about getting a flat tire on our bicycle or moving to a different country, we try to keep in perspective what is really happening. We want to remember that it is all part of the adventure that we call living. And living overseas with my family for the first time is definitely an adventure. My wife and 3 kids have come with us to Korea. We came here in July. All of it, the whole part is an adventure. Going to the grocery store, getting a transportation card, ordering from a restaurant, or going to a bank. All of these activities are an adventure. But having lived here now for about 3 months, my family and I are realizing that there are limits to how much adventuring we can take. If we're expending all of our energies trying to navigate the new realities of living in Korea, there may not be enough energy to embrace all of the culture and the beauty that Korea has to offer. And that can lead to some frustration and disappointment. Add to all of this that we're living through a pandemic, and the moral of this story is we need each other to truly enjoy this adventure. Now, a little bit about me. I mentioned earlier that this is my first time living overseas with my family, which is true. But it's not my first time living overseas. I actually lived in Korea from 1993 to 1995. I was 19 years old, and I spent my time learning, living with, and serving the Korean people. I became proficient in the Korean language and really learned to love this place. And actually, my first assignment was just across the river in Incheon. So it feels like I'm coming home. But the Korea of today is very different than the Korea of 25 years ago. Back then, nearly every transaction was made in cash. We bought bus tokens instead of transportation cards. We just stuck our hands out and waved one of the millions of taxis over, and they would stop and take us where we needed to go. There was no internet, so there was no taxi or coupon. And if you wanted to travel somewhere, you just went to the bus station, bought a ticket with cash, and hoped that you were heading in the right direction. Korea of today has made incredible strides, and that has made our lives easier. With the introduction of cell phones and translating apps, everything has changed. However, some of those strides have also complicated life for people who aren't native Koreans. I'll talk more about that in a minute. But now, I want to talk generally about this idea that I have, which is called thriving in IFEZ. The concept in general. One of my favorite parts of IFEZ is the vision it has to make itself into an international community. This is a lofty goal, but my feelings are that we're well on our way. The ultimate goal is that everyone is able to thrive in IFEZ. So in order to do that, I propose the following model. You can see this model in your program. Ideas leads to information and resources, which lead to dissemination and accessibility, and that leads to a thriving in IFEZ. The flow of ideas from all perspectives is vital in any decision-making model. In our specific case, receiving ideas from the expat community and the local community will allow both groups to better understand the perspectives of others. Also, it allows the decision makers to have a better understanding of how and what to prioritize. The collection of these ideas leads to the next step, putting together the information and resources necessary to support those ideas. Now, these are tangible solutions, and I'll mention a few of those in a minute. But having the information and resources is only part of the success of the program. People need to know what those things are. That leads to dissemination and accessibility. Now, I've spent almost my entire professional career developing and analyzing public policy. And if there's one thing that I've learned, it's that the public policy is both an art and a science. What I mean by that is, yes, there are scientific answers to policy questions. That is, how big of a wastewater treatment plant do we need? How much density per square kilometer will our infrastructure support? However, there is an art to how those decisions are made and disseminated. What is the most innovative way to distribute information to our expat community? How do we even know what they want? Who can access it? Who is accessing it? These are important policy questions that we can use our creativity and determine how to answer. I feel like this group is particularly well suited to answer this question. Dissemination of the ideas and accessibility to those ideas are the key. Once all of these pieces are in place, ideas, information and resources, dissemination and accessibility, all community members, expats and locals alike, can thrive in IFEZ. So with the policy framework in place, I'm going to transition now to some policy ideas that I believe will help the expat community feel more comfortable in IFEZ. A few of these ideas I know that you're already working on. A few might be new ideas that our panel can discuss. All of them, I believe, will shape IFEZ into the true international community that it wants to be. I'm going to make 6 recommendations. Now, this is not an exhaustive list, just some low-hanging fruit, as we would call it in the policy world. In other words, these are policy recommendations that can be implemented without major investment to implementation. The first policy recommendation that I'm going to make is around emergency notifications in English. One of the biggest challenges that English-only speaking expats have is the emergency text messages that we receive every day, sometimes many times per day. I mean, Each time my phone buzzes, I feel like I need to stop and find time to use Google Translate to know what it says. Among other things, that impacts the efficiency of my work. One policy idea would be that we allow foreigners to opt in to an English version of that. And there are examples of that happening in Korea already, if you look at down at Jeju Island, for example. The second policy recommendation is what Commissioner Lee mentioned earlier, and that is transitioning apartment loudspeaker announcements into English. And I know that this is progressively getting better, but it's something that was really important. When I first moved here, frankly, I was quite surprised to hear the loudspeaker go off in my apartment. Again, I've only been here for 3 months. And so when that went off for the first time, I was quite surprised. Even though I understand a very basic level of Korean, the speaker was speaking so quickly that I couldn't understand anything. So I waited and hoped that after the announcement we could hear one in English, but it was not available. My fear is that when something like that happens, it's really important, and so I'm missing something. And since it's not written down, I cannot translate it. And so I don't know what's happening. This is particularly shocking, I think, to Americans, because very few, if any, apartment complexes in the United States have loudspeakers built into them. So not only are we getting the shock from hearing something over a loudspeaker through our apartment, but not understanding what it is. Even though it might be uncomfortable for some Korean living, our Korean neighbors to hear the English version, I feel that this is a really important step for the safety and peace of mind of foreigners. And again, I know that you're working on this already. My third recommendation is that we work with international business HR, human resource departments to provide some thriving in IFEZ resources for newly hired employees. I see this as a joint venture that does two positive things. First, it ensures that IFEZ and the international businesses are communicating on a regular basis. Maybe once or twice a year, they can meet and update the list of services that are available. The businesses will have some sort of onboarding process for new employees, so it will be a nice opportunity for them to share that information. Second, it'll give the opportunity for the businesses to share the desires of their employees with IFEZ. I see this as a win-win. Some of these resources are what Commissioner Lee mentioned earlier, for example, translating services. But they could also provide a list of important apps to download, even before you get to Korea. How to access the hospital services, cultural opportunities, and other things. My fourth recommendation is that we work with IGC. This is going to be a selfless plug here, so just be patient with me. But that we work with the Incheon Global Campus universities and some of the international high schools to create apps in English with important information. Apps such as transportation maps, banking, online ordering, and cultural experiences. I'm sure many are doing this, but I think this will become more important as time goes on. Plus, it integrates the international student community with IFEZ and can build some important relationships. My fifth recommendation is that we update the YouTube and social media pages. This is the key. YouTube and social media drive almost all of the communication in Korea. This is a perfect opportunity for IFEZ to improve those baseline videos to help ease the experience of the expats. I can even imagine these being joint projects with the University of Utah's Film and Media Arts program and some of our international high school students. A list of videos could include how-to videos, such as how to get a transportation card, how to navigate through the banking world, using coupon, food delivery, ordering a taxi, or travel destinations. All of these are vital skills that expats need right when they get here. And if we can update those videos on YouTube or social media, it'll be really beneficial. And Facebook is another good and important medium. IFEZ is doing a great job with its Facebook page, but it would be very beneficial to see more support content, not just event content. And my sixth and final recommendation is that we install or implement English transportation signs and English announcements on the buses. Korea has a superb transportation system. It's especially superb if you can read Korean. If not, it's a much more difficult experience. I'll share one example with you. When we visited 2 years ago, my family and I went to Seoul, and we took a bus back. Now, I read Korean and speak a little bit. Nobody in my family does. I had to stay in Seoul, and I had to send them back on a bus. And it was a very stressful experience for them to know where to get off. I said, get off on the last stop. Well, there's not really a last stop on a circulating bus system. And so it was a bit of a stressful situation. Had there been an English option, it would have made their adventure a little bit less adventuresome. Let me close by saying this. IFEZ is a wonderful area. IFEZ is doing a great job of creating an international community. I think if we remember that collective ideas lead to information and resources, which lead to dissemination and accessibility, which leads to everyone thriving in IFEZ, we are well on our way to working together and making this the international city we all want to be. And remember, it's all part of the adventure. Thank you.
The phrase "is all about a part of the adventure" really hit me, and I hope we can all venture into the IFEZ. Next, the speaker, Beimisola Disu, the CBO at George Mason University Korea, will talk about progress, not perfection, a cross-cultural subject on life in IFEZ. Please welcome her.
Thank you, Mia. So I want you to just take a little walk with me. I'm more visual. The time is 11 p.m., and my luggage finally comes out at Incheon Airport after a series of flight delays. I'm exhausted and can't wait to get to my location and just sort of crash and sleep. I go through the exit, and I'm happy that I could locate the proper taxi line. I tell the attendant where I'm going. Unfortunately, he understands English and tells the taxi, and I get in. About 25 minutes later, my taxi pulls up to a building that doesn't look familiar to me, but it's dark, so I'm questioning myself, and gestures quickly for me to get down. We all know that Korean pali pali, right? My Korean is limited at that time, still is, to hello and thank you, and his English is limited to get out. So trying to explain this confusion as to why I don't recognize this building is clearly a challenge. After several minutes, I'm trying to show him a photo. He gets frustrated and asks for his payment and very quickly removes my luggage from the boot and zooms off. I'm now quickly regretting my decision to be considerate of my colleagues who had offered to pick me up, but given the multiple flight delays, I decided to just take a taxi and brave it. You see, I've lived in 4 continents and I've traveled to over 100 countries, so for me, surely getting from the airport to my home should be a simple task. Turns out I was wrong and overstating my abilities at that time. So as I stood sweltering in the hot summer of Songdo's humidity, I'm now standing in front of Peugeot Global Campus Building instead of Incheon Global Campus Building, which no one around me could help because it was late and I couldn't reach out to anybody. I very quickly started reconsidering my life choices that brought me here. I frantically located my phone and turned on my international roaming service to call my assistant, who could hopefully get me out of my current predicament. This was 2014 summer, and this was also my less than smooth welcome to life as an international resident here in IFEZ. I can regale you with more now funny, but back then, very stressful moments that happened sort of over the next few months as I adjusted to life and trying to navigate the new normal. I must acknowledge at least having the privilege, since that I at least had people who were willing or were paid to assist me, so I at least could make it home, while many expats or foreign residents do not. Annyeonghaseyo, my name is Baimi Disu, and I'm the Chief Business Officer at George Mason University, Korea. It is my distinct honor to be part of this inaugural forum today, and I want to send a special thanks to Commissioner Lee and the entire IFEZ team for organizing this very important event. I opened up with that story of my experience from many years ago as a prelude to my speech today. So let's now forward to today, October 2020. I live in a much different IFEZ than 6 years ago when I first arrived. Specifically in Songdo, there are a lot more people for one. It used to seem quite desolate back then. There's a more engaged and active group of foreigners now living here. And there are a lot more options for restaurants, shopping, as well as other activities to do. For those who are new to the area, you're probably thinking, oh, she's easily impressed. Trust me, those who work for me will definitely disagree. It's just that compared to what things were, I'm looking at what things are. And you would look and say, there's still a million things that are missing and things that make life very difficult. We would both be right. Things are a lot better, but we still have a really long way to go to make this transition for foreign residents to be quite seamless. This is why my topic for today is titled, Progress, Not Perfection. My colleague from IGC, Greg, already walked you through some creative policy ideas and on how we can thrive together. And my perspective, I hope, is to provide a cross-cultural understanding of how we can do the same. Back in the home campus at George Mason in Virginia, I teach in the business school, and we love frameworks in the B school, right? So I ask your indulgence as I walk you through a few to demonstrate my points. I'd like to first start with addressing the main issue of an experience gap between what is the current state of affairs and what is the desired state for foreign residents. I'll be making some general statements just with the caveat that we know that this obviously doesn't represent everybody's opinion. So the current state, there's a segment of foreign residents that are unhappy with life in IFEZ. Companies rely on global talent for their human capital needs, and there's an opportunity cost of them continuously having to recruit new people, which is much cheaper to retain their existing talent. Some local businesses find interacting with foreign customers quite bothersome. And foreigners and I guess I should say international residents and locals don't necessarily understand each other's cultures, which sometimes leads to misunderstanding and conflict. My perspective of a future state would be an IFEZ that lives up to its vision of being an international business district. An IFEZ where both international and local residents are more educated on each other's culture, more respectful, and see each other as a valuable asset to the community. My future state includes more businesses and organizations in IFEZ make a collective effort to become more foreign friendly. And each of us that reside here in IFEZ feel like we're thriving and eventually become brand ambassadors based on our true pride of living in this community. To continue to illustrate my point, I'll start with another framework, which you can see in the brochure provided, which is just really looking at Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Most people have needs that are tied to their well-being and their happiness. And these are just at most considered basic needs. They don't necessarily make people happy, but the absence of them make people demotivated or unhappy. So looking at this framework, I'm really just going to address the bottom three, which looks at psychological needs, safety needs, and love and belonging needs. The reason I'm not addressing esteem and self-actualization is that is reserved for a privileged few, which is people who have reached a certain level of attainment in their careers or their lifestyle that what I'm going to discuss doesn't really impact them as much. So let's look at psychological needs according to Maslow. This looks at things such as air, water, food, shelter, sleep. Over the past few years, the air quality here has been a challenge, and I've heard from many people, especially parents who have young children, how this has been a cause for concern and a reason they may want to leave and transition to somewhere with better air quality. There was recently issues with the quality of water that was in the news a little while ago. And people from different cultures having access to international food and restaurants and groceries has been a challenge. Next, I'll move on to the second, which is a safety need. Greg touched on some of this, but the alerts only coming out in Korean creates a sense of anxiety for a lot of international people. The need to have multiple apps and be very speedy in how you check things is also bothersome. There's sometimes on the news this looming threat of North Korea's aggression. I remember I was here for the Asian Games a few years ago, and we had a situation where there was a lot of excitement here in Incheon because some people had come from North Korea here. So our students got quite nervous, or at least their parents did by watching the news. There's constantly typhoons and different reasons why your phone keeps being blown up. And then 119 or other related services are quite intimidating for people because of the language barrier. Third, I'll move on to the notion of love and belonging. For those that come to IFEZ, I've heard from many who are here without families or a support network that it's quite daunting to find people that you can connect with and engage with when you're here. There's also there's a perception by many foreigners that the local nationals view their presence as disturbing, which is why they're not welcome to their businesses. So this creates a sense of anxiety and not feeling supported or feeling a sense of love and belonging. We would like to acknowledge that there are a few global bridges who do go out of their way to make things easy, and IFEZ did a good job recognizing those people through numerous ways. So expats can't really thrive and be successful if they're too busy trying to survive. That's sort of the notion of why we're talking here. So they don't have that extra capacity, they don't have the incentive or the motivation to do so. So it's just easier for them to quit and find an alternative. Again, this is not to say there hasn't been a lot of progress over the past. I cannot testify to when I since got here, there have been a lot of things IFEZ has done to make it more comfortable. The Global Center, translation services, the annual survey, the electronic signs in some of the locations, the newly established foreign-friendly certificate, the newly formed ICCC task force, and then the Bridge Awards are just a few of the achievements over the last few years that makes me term this as progress. There are also some desires by the foreign community and demands that we make that are challenging for IFEZ to execute just because they're things that are sort of at a national level or at a federal government policy level. So things such as making the state like a smoke-free is not something that can easily be rectified. So we do acknowledge that some of our needs are more complicated. So when you look at sort of this expectation and reality gap, where we're trying to get before people can become brand ambassadors is a situation where the expected service exceeds the perceived service. And once you have that, then you truly have people who are delighted and happy to stay. That also ties into what is known as the customer experience framework. And I'm going to touch on the piece that is culture. There are many lenses to which you can look to derive a comprehensive and tangible action plan that can improve this perception and experience for residents. But once again, I want to just quickly touch on the fact that IFEZ brands itself as an international business district. And because of that, that's the perceived reality. So when people come and they don't have experiences that match that, it creates this level of dissatisfaction. So there's a bit of a marketing and branding issue with that. There are arguably like 300 or so rankings that kind of identify what is an international or global city. One that I'm looking at, and if you look across those lists, you'll see certain cities that show up over and over again, including London, New York, Tokyo, Los Angeles, Hong Kong, Paris. One aspect of those that I'll touch on is I like A.T. Kearney's Global Cities Index that looks at cultural experiences, or the Economist Intelligence Unit Index that looks at social and cultural character, which looks at openness, diversity, cultural vibrancy. This is not to say there's only one stakeholder that's responsible for us to all thrive together and be responsible. I like to think for this to work, it has to be this pool where both foreign expats or international residents, local residents, as well as the government, various government agencies have to collaborate together to make this happen. So it's a much multifaceted approach that we feel that is needed to achieve this. In terms of sort of expats or of international people who live here, there are some quick steps we can do, or low-hanging fruit, as Greg says, in policy. You probably should do extensive research before moving to a country. You should expect there'll be a level of culture shock, and you should have strategies for how you manage or navigate this to some extent. You shouldn't expect to sanitize a local culture. You should cultivate global dexterity. As I mentioned, I've lived in multiple continents, and each country is still new to me. It gets easier the more you do it, but you have to sort of start somewhere. You have to make the first step and reach out to others different than you. Where possible, try and learn some basic phrases of a language that can make life a little bit easier. I am currently taking one of IFEZ's virtual classes. I am grateful none of my students are in that class to see how poorly I'm doing. But ultimately, there are resources out there to help you. You should be respectful and understand that everyone is struggling and everyone's dealing with their own battles, so don't assume that there's negative expectations from other people. And also just generally celebrate progress, because in cultures that are sort of communal, acknowledging what has been done is also a way to motivate people to want to do more. In terms of some key programming or things we can do with local nationals or IFEZ, is really look at programming that brings locals and foreigners together. We have lots of programs that are targeted at foreigners or targeted at locals, but there are not many that actually allow us to integrate and collaborate together. Obviously, as an academic, I would recommend things such as experiential lectures where you have the opportunity to learn. We call it edutainment, right? You have a lecture, you learn something tangible, and then you go out to experience it. So I believe I'll do a shameless plug for Mason as well. I believe Professor Wilson has done this in the past where he gave a special lecture to community members. And then if we did something on sort of the culture of food in IFEZ, or in Korea, then we could go out to like a food market or to a restaurant. So things that bring experiential things for students where they actually learn the culture, but they also get to experience it firsthand will be very interesting, but help to start narrowing that gap. Also, we have sort of a bias towards what are the more sort of loud or dominant culture, which in IFEZ sometimes is the Western cultures. And so I would recommend trying to find ways that celebrate all cultures, from even where there are 2 residents that are from that country, but provided a more diverse perspective of what international really is. So not just having events that showcase people from the United States or Europe, but really looking at people from all aspects. So locals and other foreigners can also learn about those cultures as well. That's one of the essences of a truly global environment. Something simple like making a global recipe cookbook is something that we could all collaborate, and you can download off of a website. So residents could share their favorite recipes, either Korean or from their countries, and all groups could enjoy that together. Celebrating or bringing awareness to global causes such as International Women's Day, Black History Month, Hispanic Heritage Month, etc., really creates this notion of being an international city. The UN provides an extensive list on their website. I've shared the link in my presentation as well. Creating something fun like the IFEZ Olympics or a scavenger hunt or a fitness Friday that addresses other aspects of well-being could be something that would be useful as well. Surely individuals should make the effort to make their own individual connections, but we know that it's a challenge. So creating avenues that make this easier would be well recommended. Sessions on mental health, especially now given the pandemic and all the different stresses that people are going through, would be really helpful, especially for the international community that might be feeling particularly vulnerable during these times and not having access to their families and friends. We currently do a survey of foreign residents or international residents, but maybe participating in a survey for local residents to get their perceptions on foreigners would be helpful to also build processes and programming and things that is a combination of both insights. Continuing to reward those bridgers who are going out of their way to make life easy for residents is always a great idea. Also, maybe creating something like an IFEZ Chingu program so people like me who may show up at 11 p.m. at night lost could have somebody to welcome you at the airport or help you navigate those first few days when you first arrive into the country and you don't feel as lonely when you get here. It would also, I think Greg might have touched on this as well, having some sort of repository, an online calendar, for example, where folks can go and self-upload any events that they find out. We don't expect IFEZ to have one person who can do the entire thing, but something that's sort of a crowdsourcing platform that allows people, if they find out about interesting things, to post it, and anybody looking for activities or resources can go to that database and search for it. It'll be hard to keep it updated, but I have some ideas of how we've done this at our institution. So finally, those are just ideas on actual programming, but in terms of culture, is also making sure not only you address the geographic diversity, but also other kinds of diversity. When we talk about it, I know we sort of segment into different groups, but whatever strategy and cultural programming we do should really look at the variety of people who live in IFEZ. So for me, it's things like young professionals, experienced professionals, foreign college graduates, maybe creating sessions on how to transition your resume into a Korean resume that could help you successfully find a job if you want to stay here, or hosting international student job fairs here at IFEZ. Short-term residents, people who know they're only here for a short amount of time, their needs are a little bit different than long-term residents. So really sort of segmenting your strategies in a way that allows you to target the various groups and make it actually impactful for them. Visitors or tourists, I know there's some tour buses around. I've done one of them with a guest of mine, so doing more things like that. Families have a different need. Foreign residents with no families have a different need. Spouses that are not working, or foreign spouses to Korean nationals, or Korean spouses to foreign nationals. These are all different groups with their own unique sort of characteristics that would require special thought and more inclusion in terms of how we program. And finally, religious diversity, celebrating special holidays or creating awareness of special holidays such as Rosh Hashanah, Ramadan, in addition to general holidays like Christmas and other holidays celebrated here. So in closing, there's no one step, there's no one shoe fits all solution to this. And I think IFEZ has made a ton of progress, and I particularly have experienced that over my time here. I truly think it's progress, not perfection, and if we collaborate and take a cross-cultural perspective, I think we can all learn to respect each other and help make this a community we're all excited to live in. 감사합니다.
Thank you, Baby Soladisu, for sharing your experience and have a diverse idea that we can apply as IFEZ program. Now, let's take a break. We'll have about 8-minute break, and we will start the discussion. At the end of the break, presenter and the moderator and panelists, please come to the stage and have a seat. And those who are watching through the YouTube channel, we will be presenting on IFEZ PR video during the break. Thank you.
A splendid miracle built on the mudflats. Passion has changed fate. Dedication has changed the world, and the change continues today. When everyone else competed within the country, we competed with the world. We are making the world bigger by taking on an innovative challenge, creating a global business frontier. The first has become the best, and the challenge has become a leap. Now, people say, worthy of IFEZ, like IFEZ. A city for the future that learns from the world. All the world's eyes are on IFEZ. Songdo International City is a base for Korea's high-tech knowledge industry. Home to IT, BT Research, and global education institutes. Yeongjong International City is rapidly becoming a center of aviation, logistics, tourism, and leisure around Incheon International Airport. Cheongna International City is a center of finance, distribution, healthcare, and high-tech. We began after Shanghai, Hong Kong, Singapore, and other cities. So we had to offer a new paradigm for a global corporate city to become the best by ourselves, rather than following the paths blazed by others. We crystallized ideas and shared them far and wide to create IFEZ, a futuristic city with a self-sustaining urban ecosystem. Unique urban landscapes and an excellent logistics and transportation infrastructure. As thousands of companies constantly transact with each other every day, they become more and more competitive on the global stage and step up their foreign direct investment. IFEZ is once again leading the growth. A city that is admired by people around the world. A city reaching for its dreams. From Korea's first free economic zone to a hub city of Northeast Asia, a cradle of the convergence and integration MICE industry, and the pride of Incheon, IFEZ sets the standard for a global city, a global business maker. IFEZ is history, the world, and the future. A global gateway wide open to the sky, land, and ocean. IFEZ is a global economic center with connections to 147 cities within 3 hours. Well positioned to benefit from an FTA, some 80 global companies call this city home. They meet, work together, and grow towards the future. IFEZ has created a cluster of 15 international organizations, including the World Bank Group Korea office, and is leading a dynamic global culture. Global medical companies and research institutes are flocking to Songdo, making it a center of high-growth businesses. Taking on the challenge of achieving the most biosimilar sales, Songdo is emerging as Asia's best medical cluster and an international bio-healthcare complex. At the vanguard of the fourth industrial revolution, IFEZ is accumulating next-generation convergence and integration industries, building a smart city that is a model of future cities, and designing a safe and happy high-tech city. The city with an extraordinary view on the world. IFEZ exceeds today's standards and limits. IFEZ is taking on endless challenges to become a business and service platform that opens new possibilities. People flock here from around the world to create a city with pride and a colorful cultural life. IFEZ stands steadfastly by companies and people, and offers the best living conditions, where one can enjoy the best views and performances, art, culture, and leisure. IFEZ offers an exciting new lifestyle. The future is already here in IFEZ. A bold challenge that began with a vision of bringing the world together. We won't miss the amazing future unfolding in IFEZ. We change today and innovate tomorrow through creative inspiration, the essence of IFEZ. There is only one word that represents all of these things: IFEZ. Global Business Frontier. IFEZ.
So hold your breath and we'll begin soon. Okay, from now on, we will have about 35 minutes of discussion. I will pass the baton to Roland Wilson from George Mason. He will lead the discussion.
Test. Good afternoon. First of all, like everybody else here, I think we should all be honored. It's a great day to have this type of forum together. Great appreciation goes out to Commissioner Lee and also the great team that's put this event on today, despite the ongoing issues with the coronavirus as well. So it's a great event again. Great music too, I loved it. I wish we should do that more often. And again, all the hard work that went into this. My name is Dr. Roland Wilson, as she said earlier. I run the Conflict Announcement Resolution Program at our University of George Mason here in Songdo. Also, I've had the opportunity and pleasure to come to South Korea since 1984. I've lived here 3 times, so I've seen Korea in its earlier days and then all the great technology advances it has today. So it's great to see all the minds come together and to produce such a city as IFEZ. So as I moderate this event today, I want us to think about what a city is to the people in the city. What I mean by this is we can look at foreigners in our city, regardless whether it's IFEZ or New York or whatever, and we can look at IFEZ to see foreigners as a way to make money or a way to have an extended family, a relationship with those that live in the city. And we have the expression, it takes 2 to tango, and I believe that relationship is supposed to be a little bit of both. We need to have that together. So the format today, we only have about 35 minutes to go. So the format's going to be, I'm going to ask each of the panelists to give about 3 minutes of their thoughts and one good question to the 2 speakers. and then the two speakers will have about 2 minutes for each question given to respond to that. First of all, about the speech itself, I think that both of the speakers did a great job. They're very different in their backgrounds and their experiences, but yet the things they talked about and spoke about were pretty much in harmony with one another. In fact, I think this would be a great way to put two papers together into a thesis, or later on a book for IFEZ maybe. We should think about that. So with that, what I'd like to do is just make a few comments about each one. Greg, you mentioned about adventures and limitations of those adventures, the importance of culture, the frustrations with the technology, and of course the need for information and dissemination of things that they know in IFEZ. And of course, Bemi, you also talked about the need for resilience and cultural competency, which I think is very great to say, and the need for collaboration, to change how you look at things, to change the lens, and to make a plan to go forward. And of course, progress to bring all things together and move forward, especially in the business realm. So based on that one question, Greg, first to you is, when you talk about dissemination information, your chart, which is a great flow chart there, shows the information dissemination going one way. How, though, do we make sure that it's not just one way, but it's a circular motion, so we continue to improve that information, and also as expats, as foreigners, get that information back to IFEZ proper?
Yeah, thank you, Roland. I appreciate that, and I appreciate the question. This is a constant challenge in any sort of decision-making or communication model. Like, how do we keep communication going in both directions? And it's particularly difficult when one of the main battles is over the language communication barrier. But I think that the idea that IFEZ reaching out specifically to the global entities, for one perspective, thinking specifically about the global worker, that IFEZ working closely with the global entities, the businesses or whatever, and being able to share information directly to them, and then getting information back from them, getting feedback that they can then implement together, I think would be really helpful. The other thing that IFEZ has done recently that I just saw on their Facebook page, actually, is putting together the Foreign Relations Committee. Bemi, I believe you're on that. Some of the other committee members are here today. I think being able to feed back information through those sources are really, really helpful. The third thing, and again, this is something that professionally I've done a lot of, is survey research, and so I'm a committed fan to survey research. Now, we've talked a lot today about information flowing to the international community, but we also need to consider information flowing to and from the local residents as well, the Korean residents who live in the IFEZ area. Are we collecting their needs? Bemi addressed this a little bit. Are we collecting their needs and sharing them back with the international community so we as international community members can integrate those needs into our lives as well? Are we really putting forth that effort?
Okay, great. Bemi, your turn. I really enjoyed when you talked about the need for progress and not perfection. I think that when we look for perfection, we all make mistakes and we forget what makes a great society what it is. And you had a great chart on Maslow's basic human needs, and I think that's important for us. We teach in the conflict analysis resolution field in great detail. But as you look at the basic human needs, how do we let the international community here and also the Korean community know at IFEZ that these basic human needs, or this chart of this level of needs that we have, how do we make sure we let them know that this is not just a one-time deal? We don't say, okay, you eat today, you don't need to eat tomorrow. Or you have love and affection, or you have communication today, but not tomorrow. So how do we make this a constant progress in order to make sure those levels of basic human needs are met and expanded on in the future?
Great, thank you, Roland, great question. I think it ties a bit into what Greg touched on too, where it has to be this or you mentioned as well, this feedback loop. So I think if this is one of as I mentioned, there are many lenses that you can use to make this analysis, but if this is one that is valid and IFEZ finds agency in it, maybe restructuring the surveys that go out to both the local residents and the international residents in a way that captures what this is, and so you can evaluate if those needs, and they're perception of how those needs are being satisfied are met each year. So should that, as a holistic, kind of going back to this use of surveys or doing some primary research, if you can look at that and last year people felt like happy and next year that number is down, then you know that something's changed. So I think having some sort of systematic way where you can track these specific designing questions that address these specific needs will enable us to know if those needs are being met and if there are any changes with those needs.
Okay, great answer. Thank you very much. So we're going to go on to the panelists now and have them, again, about 3 minutes, if you would, and if you can, at the end of those 3 minutes, if you have one question or comment targeted to the two different speakers, we appreciate it. And Mr. Kim Se-jun, would you like to go first?
Hello? Oh, okay. Well, it's very honor to speak with you about the living environment of the IFEZ. Well, actually, let me clarify the goal and objectives of our IFEZ authority. It's really simple. So we want to make the foreign adventurers as more enjoyable, more safe. Well, our aim is to make the IFEZ an real international city, anyway. But it is our aim. There are a lot of long way to go. But still, we still also believe that we are on the right track. We are just updating and renovating our attitude and systems. Well, regarding the suggestions and ideas that our two distinguished speakers, well, I'm really happy to say that most of the agendas and suggestions are on our review. So we are currently reviewing to adopt how to satisfy those suggestions. Well, only 3 minutes I have, so I cannot say that item by item. But I understand that. Myself, I was in foreign countries for a decade, more than a decade. So I understand how the foreign residents feel when they are just go astray on a foreign, very unaccustomed the route or the environment. So I understand very well. So we are really ready to provide the assistance, administrative assistance, and also the informal assistance to our foreign residents. So, actually, a month ago, our commissioner, Mr. Lee, publicized the vision and objectives of 2030 of the IFEZ. In the vision of 2030, the improving the living environment of our foreign workers and foreign residents, that is a very vital part of the vision. So we are really try to make our IFEZ more abundant in the cultural things. We are every day we are still on our discussions how to make our IFEZ more enjoyable, more cultural. So this is cultural. So it's very ambiguous word, but we are every day we are we're just developing many very detailed ideas. So Mr. Hill just whispered me that please implement all the suggestions. I think it's possible. It's possible if there is the many suggestions that you cannot implement. Then let me just clarify why this cannot be implemented. So this is our duty and our job.
Okay, thank you. The great further introduction to what IFEZ is trying to do in the future with the objectives for it. Christina, can I ask you to go next, please?
Yes. Yes. My name is Christina Alger, and thank you, IFES, for inviting me. And I feel that I'm here representing one part of the local society of foreigners. I am a professional that by coming to Korea, all of a sudden I became a stay-at-home. And one part of Bemi's speech, and I read the paper, really got my attention because we live here together and apart from the Korean, from the local society. And thinking of these 2 points and considering that I have only 3 minutes, okay, I should also say that I talked to other spouses that come here. And when I came, the first thing I did, my first week, I sent a Facebook message. I made a post saying, I just came, I need to see people. Who wants to have dinner, coffee, walk, whatever? And that's how I met many people. I'm social, I like to see people, okay? And then I met some expats like me. Then I went to IFES. I found out about IFES. I went to IFES and I asked, how can I volunteer? Because I lived in the US, I lived before. I'm from Brazil originally. And the best way for me to go and adapt was to mix up with the locals. And I became a naturalist working in nature center and teaching American children about American nature. So it's not because you are different, you come from another country. The basic science is the same all over. Anyway, then I came to IFES and I asked, how can I volunteer? And they said, I'm sorry, you don't speak Korean. And yes, unfortunately, I don't. And if I stay at home and I stay only with the group of expats that we have to do because we don't speak Korean, we are not going to learn Korean. We are not going to learn about Korean culture. And the way I feel it, it's as important as we learn about Korean culture that the Koreans learn about us. That after we have the culture shock, but one of the first things we learn is that the Koreans, the locals, they have the basic needs. We have family unities. We have, like you made your food pyramid, we have the same needs. We need other people. And anyway, it's very important that I see an IFES should work more is to have some kind of the increasing in the understanding on how the Koreans, the locals, see us. And because we have had cases of, well, it's lack of understanding. That's how I call it. Koreans not renting an apartment because the family is foreign, expats. And I think it's just a lack of understanding. And they don't see the culture, or I'm walking my dog, and then the grandmother will leave, and then I say, who is the grandchild? And then I say, no, my dog is trained. And then the child says something in Korean that might explain, no, the dog is okay. Then they come back to the elevator. You know, and I know, 3 minutes, it's almost, but one thing that I noticed and I was thinking about when I came here is that the adaptation, and I see that we go through the same process. It's like, first, we have the culture shock. Even if you do the research, it's the culture. Korean doesn't sound like any other language that I heard. And you only speak Korean here. And then it's the culture shock, but then there is that euphoria, honeymoon. Oh my gosh, I'm living in Asia. Let's travel, it's wonderful. But then I'm talking about phases that are well known and I went through and my friends went through. Then there is the anxiety, oh my, am I going to be able to do it? And then you start the doubt. Then you start understanding the culture. And then, in my case, came coronavirus. And then we had to stay home. And we had to cut the initial interchange, and the friends that I was making, the Korean friends, we all had to go back to the apartment. And now we have contacts with other foreigners. So coronavirus made it difficult. We should not, I think, forget that. Yeah, okay. And just one more thing, please, we need work opportunity for spouses, because spouses that are not happy are not going to support the husbands that much, or wives, and that long stay could become a short stay in Korea. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Christina, great points. I think that many in the audience and even up here, we share the feeling of frustration, but also hope, because we know that any challenge can be made into opportunities for us in the future here at IFEZ. Again, great comments. Next, we're honored to have a student on the panel up here, and I think it's a great perspective for her to have. So I'll turn over to Quinn now to give a couple of minutes.
Hello, my name is Quinn, and I am from SUNY Korea. I study fashion business management at FIT, and I first just wanted to thank IFEZ for allowing me to be here and offer a student's perspective, as it is really, I think, it's very unique compared to the views of the business professionals working here or people working here as adults. And I also wanted to say that thank you to the speakers as well. I read over the papers, and I was very touched by the different policies that you propose, so thank you. And I would just like to say that I think it's a really unique challenge to be a student in Korea, because not only are we living in a foreign country, we're also having to experience all of these grown-up things by ourselves for the first time. So, you go off to college and it's pretty much your first time living alone, doing banking, grocery shopping, all of the things that were mentioned, all of those basic needs that Dr. Tsu mentioned, but we're doing it by ourselves for the very first time. And I think that's something that is especially challenging and anxiety-inducing for foreign students like myself. And I think that really takes away from our opportunity to thrive as students. It could also affect our schoolwork as well if we're having to deal with that anxiety every day. And I think that having a support system and just having translated materials, basic information and resources as soon as we come to Korea is also something that would be extremely helpful for us as international students. And I think adding to that, the Korean college experience is very interesting. It varies even between schools in IGC, but there's this weird sort of mix between, you have these foreign students with sort of a Western perspective on college, and then you have these Korean students that have a completely different college culture from the West. And so I think it's really interesting to see how those two come together on IGC's campuses. And I think just having a way for us to have an open discussion about how our visions of college, what they are like, and what our expectations are would be incredibly helpful for international students, because I do feel a pretty strong divide between the Korean students and the foreign students, especially, at IGC's universities in SUNY, which is a very large proportion of Korean students, and a smaller proportion of foreign students. So I think that's another thing that could be really helpful as a resource and an opportunity to just share and have a discussion between the students. And moreover, I think it's really important to have students integrated into IFES's overall vision for the future, just because we are the ones that, if we are able to get jobs here, I'm sure there are many foreign students who would like to stay and offer their talents in Korea, in Songdo, because it's a wonderful place to live, really. And so I think moving forward, finding ways on how to integrate the Korean and international students actively into policy making or just general, life in IFES is really important. And I think Songdo and IFES in particular is in a really interesting position to do that, just because it is a newer city and we have that opportunity to really create that culture together. And I think that's something that would be really important, just making sure that all of the pieces are sort of combined, and also just assisting students with that transition from student life to working life, which there is a large gap. There's no foreign student accommodations in companies. There's going to be, Korean company structure. And I think just making sure that international students are prepared for that, as well as just nurturing, we're young adults. We want to have fun. We want to meet friends, make relationships, and I think just being able to address all of those different aspects of student life in IFES and as a foreign student is really important. And I am really grateful that I was given an opportunity to just sort of bring this to attention. So thank you very much.
Great job. The IFES, I think we have a new worker ready to come and work for you if you have a job available for her after graduation. Great job there again. Emma, you got to finish up now the talk here, and then we can go over some of the common points from out the themes, okay? So please.
Hi, my name is Emma Nakai. I'm an American Japanese, and I'm here as a spouse of an expat. My husband has a job here in Sendo. We've been here for a year exactly, and we've been through a lot of issues here, especially because we look just like Koreans. People expect me to speak Korean and understand everything. But so when they find out that I don't, they're shocked, and every time I go through that, it's very frustrating. Well, okay, so let me share some experience that we went through. The transportation system is very, I think it's great here, especially the buses going all over. But all the signs in the buses are in Korean only. And the announcements for the next stop, the coming stop, and the next stop confuses the foreigners a lot. I have mistaken the bus stop to get off several times to figure out, they're announcing the coming stop and the next one. And they only announce the English version, very small voice. So we don't actually get it. So we always get off at the wrong bus stop. Well, so hopefully for the model, I feel like the Ministry of Transport or local companies need to be involved to get it improved. And about the apartment loudspeaker, of course, our apartment still does not have any English. Even the posters, the signs in the elevators and everything is all in Korean. So I don't know if everyone's apartment has English now or no. Okay, so I really hope, because every time they announce something, I'm very stressed because you don't know what's going on. There might be a fire alarm. You don't know what's happening. So every time I run to the speaker with my Google Translator, but it doesn't really translate well. So yeah, I mean that should be worked very quickly, hopefully. And also, I heard that the IFES is helping the translating for the apartments, and I kind of want to know how that works. If I have to go to the Kwangrisil to, do the negotiation, or is it the IFES going to the apartment, offering the work? Yes, I want to figure out how that works. Okay, and actually, my life here started with just like Christina. Before I get here, I have contacted a few people on Facebook. I posted that I am coming here, and then like a lot of nice Korean people have helped me get settled. They have picked me up in my apartment, took me out to the city for dinner, and I think I have a lot of friends here now and enjoying my life. So I really thank local people. And yes, I hope that everyone gets the same opportunity. I speak English, so I think I have better chance than other people who don't speak English or Korean. They just get here and they're isolated. So even for the people who do not speak English nor Korean should have the same chance. And I hope that IFES is gonna take, I don't know, some chance for them too. Okay, so thank you for inviting me today, and hope this IFES model will be successful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Emma. The great comments. So what I'm going to do is just go over some of the major points. I think that these points can also be flowed into the next portion of it, where we talk to the audience and use it. Everybody out here, tell us what you're thinking and have some questions for us, and vice versa, and have that larger conversation we need to have. So I just want to qualify a few of the comments. I think they were all very great indeed. So first of all, and this is actually two comments in one, and that is that we need to be international, not just Western. You know, as Emma just said, we're not all Korean. If we look Korean, even though we're maybe Asian, the same thing for Westerners. We're not all from the United States or from Europe or wherever the case may be. So we have to understand that IFES is an international city, not a Western or a U.S., primarily U.S. city. I think it's important for us. A great comment from Quinn about students and also the IGC in general. You know, one of the key components of IFES is that the internationalism of the education here. That's why so many of the more affluent Koreans also bring their families to IFES in order to go to the international schools. But one thing I think that can certainly be helped in that, as was mentioned earlier, is the support kind of wanes after you create the university. Universities come, but we need to continue with that support in order for the students and the universities to thrive and do the great job that we're trying to do for IFES and the larger Incheon community. So one other thing that was mentioned as well is, I think that Christina made a great point, is that when people come over as family members, they had probably jobs before that, but because of the Korean laws the way they are, they can't get visas to work. So they come here expecting, like they would in the United States or other countries, to be able to work with their husbands or wives, whoever got the visa for them, but yet that's not the case. So they're coming here with all this talent, and they're sitting at home with very little to do. So although the visa is a long-term issue for the country itself, there's certainly more things that IFES can do to provide them with volunteerism, for the students to provide them with internships, work with companies to provide internships for the students in IFES area to make sure that they have a more robust experience while they're here in Korea. So I think those are great comments. It takes open communication and understanding. Open communication and understanding. We sometimes have communication. We sometimes believe we have our understanding, but we don't necessarily have a group understanding, and it's not open. So I think it's a very important key that many of you spoke about here. And of course, Mr. Kim Se-jun talked about the objectives of IFES and trying to go forward to make sure that it works in the future for all the residents here, not just the Korean residents, but the international residents that we have here again. And finally, at least one thing we got from this today, we need to be multicultural and at least bilingual in everything we do. English and Korean at the minimum, and multicultural in how we think of our city and IFES, and we're going to be better off for that. So with that, we're going to go in, I guess, to the second portion of it. Yes, we're going to go into the second portion here to open it up to the audience out here. for questions for not just IFES, but for us up here, the two great speakers. You guys were very nice to them, the panelists, and didn't ask them any hard questions. I think that's probably not very nice. You got to ask them some hard questions next time. But we'll go from there, and we'll open up to the audience then, yes?
Yes. Yes, thank you, panelists, for sharing your experience and opinions. Let's have a Q&A session now. If you have any comments about the speech or improvement of the residential environment, please let us know. Like, you can raise your hands. And if you're watching, please leave your question in the chat room. We will answer them later.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Princess Mwakego Ibrahim Pan. I just wanted to pick on what Christy Argy said about being a professional spouse of her husband working here and not having what to do. I also would like to request from IFES that you have the facilities, and there are quite a number of expert groups. If you could create like a community center for us where these different groups can come in and work. And so that the spouses who are at home with all their skills and not doing anything can wake up in the morning and come to the community center and help IFES create programs or help in different ways in the community. And if there's a community center, I think from the Oslo pyramid, the love and belonging aspect of our needs will be met. The psychological pressure that we go through will also be met. And there will be that collective interaction between the experts and the locals here in Sondo. I also would like to encourage IFES that if you want to make Sondo an international city where diversity will not just be Western, but will be inclusive of all ethnic groups that are here in Sondo, you also have to have a policy that encourages businesses that are run by foreigners from different parts of the world. If you look at Seoul, why especially Itaewon? Itaewon is a hotspot because of what? Cultural diversity is a melting point for Seoul. So we need to create something like that here in Sondo, where the locals and the foreigners can interact socially. Like the student from FIT, we have our young adults here that we don't really have a conducive environment for them to grow socially, to develop their social skills, have opportunity to make friends, have opportunity to grow in terms of their career here. So my request would be to look into those two things that are actionable, and they will not cost you any money. All you need to do is just to create the community center for us and give us the policies that will allow us do what we know how to do best by sharing our talents, our skills, and our professional aspirations with the locals here in Sondo. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Carrie Stokes. I'm also a non-working wife of a person who works here at the IGC. And I just want to say that my husband and I feel so blessed to be here in Korea during this pandemic, because if you were in New York, where we are from, we wouldn't be going to restaurants and we wouldn't be able to go anywhere. So I just feel like we should all have a nod of thanks to the Korean government for keeping us so safe and at the same time being able to continue our lives in the way, because it's awfully miserable around the world and not so bad here. So, my 2 cents.
Hello, my name is Matthew Mandel. I'm one of the students from George Mason University, Korea, one of the universities on IGC campus. So this is a question for Dr. Hill. So throughout your entire speech, you kind of really reinforce this idea that gaining information from people who have these problems is one of the most important first steps in solving these issues. However, my question is, how do we make sure that we're surveying and getting the information from the people, the expat community, who is the most isolated and the most disenfranchised? So how do we make sure that we're not just pulling from the voices at the top, but really getting to the real issues that the most isolated and the most disenfranchised people experience in the IFEZ community?
Matthew, thank you for that question. It's a really good one, and it's something that in the line of research that I've spent my career working on, we've struggled with a lot. Part of collecting information is you have to have people, you have to have two things: people who are willing to talk, and you have to have access to those people. And so one of the challenges, whether we're talking about disenfranchised people in the United States or disenfranchised people in Korea, the question is, how do we reach them? And I mean, in IFEZ, for example, we have an opportunity. We're a little bit smaller in that is that we can, there are avenues that help us get to these different populations that we, otherwise would be a lot more difficult, say if we were in Seoul, for example. But I think you're right. I mean, one of the keys to this, and I hate to sound like a professor here, but is to have the right research question and the research design, right? And I really believe that we could do that. We could sit down and we could say, oh, these are the groups we hear from a lot. These are the groups that we don't hear from very often. How come we're not hearing from them? Let's put forth the effort, the energy, and our resources to find out who those people are, but do it in a way that is still statistically strong. In other words, we're not just asking one or two people, but we're able, if we're thinking, oh, the group that we need to hear from most are the spouses of people who are working here, then let's find a good sample of those people and do it. It takes work, it takes effort, but I guarantee you that the rewards are going to be a lot better if we put that effort into it. And I think that, you know, I feel like IFEZ they're doing this with their yearly community survey, but I feel like we could do a lot more. And there's a lot of other avenues we can, and other ways that we can collect data from those people. So it's a great question. I think as we sit down and think about not the easiest way to collect that information, but the most correct way to collect it, then we can make real progress.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Chantal, and I've been here for 5 years, and I recognize in the different talk here the frustration we can have when we arrive. I'm also a spouse, and I just wanted to support what Princess said, and Christina as well, in the sense that I think taking the expression of the adventuring, when this phase is over, to thrive, I think we need purposeful activities. And purposeful activities mean often activity that relate to some work or some aim specific that we can do maybe with the local community. Because at the end, I think an international city means an international frame of mind. So it needs to come from really all sides. And it's only by getting people to probably join their talent or their drive to do something together on specific subjects that we can develop this almost, I mean, it will happen by itself. You get circumstances where people can maybe meet and do something together, whatever the language, they will create some bounds, and these bounds will be what we call an international mindset. So I really think that the action base, like Princess was saying, is a very important one on different aspects for the people who need something purposeful to do, for people to get to know each other. It will also help towards the multicultural kind of exchange that should happen. I mean, it's beneficial on many levels. And that's why I was working actually on a proposal to ask the same thing. That means facilities for interest groups to be able to do their work, to have a structure, a bit of material support, and let these groups flourish and be the seed of an international city. Thank you.
Go ahead, please.
Okay. I'd like to elaborate on what Chantal said, because in my 3 minutes, I didn't have the time to give like a concrete suggestion, because IFEZ has made it possible for us to take wonderful classes. Before COVID, I wouldn't miss a single one. But I was thinking all the time that, like wives, there are many spouses here, highly educated with graduate degrees and that are prepared to give classes to. And for example, I was designing something that I did in the past, and my elevator experience with the kid and the grandmother, okay? I was going to work more on that. And I was thinking, for example, I could give a class, mother-child, doesn't need language, doing some art, and then instead of Koreans only teaching foreigners. And if we could also do something for Koreans so they would have the opportunity to know us, to see that we are just like people. And that the survey that Bemi mentioned, it shouldn't be a survey just for the foreigners. What are the locals thinking about us? What do they expect, and what would they like to have us showing? Because there is a lot of curiosity. What are these people about? Okay, just that. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. My name is Ibrahim Pam. I work with the Green Climate Fund. My wife came as the trailing spouse, but now I feel like I'm trailing her because she's really got very busy with activities here in Songdo. I think, of course, the burden rests on us as expatriates to some degree to create opportunities for cultural and art exchanges. And I think that's part of the international experience as well. I think that the living experience here in Songdo has been very good for us. We've been here 4 years. I enjoy the tranquility in Songdo, the parks, the very nice environment. Of course, I identify, as you said, that there are very disenfranchised parts of the expatriate community as well, who might need, we might need to understand better what their needs are. But in terms of, as Christina said, also bringing the world experience to Songdo, I think in terms of an art exchange, I would be very interested, and I said this to Mr. Sejong Kim earlier, in supporting, from my cultural perspective, perhaps the creation of an African art collective, which would introduce African drama, African art, and indeed African cuisine to the IFEZ community. So that's probably something that, I think we could put on the table. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Alberto Gonzalez. I'm originally from Spain. I've been a resident of Songdo for about 4 years now. And just 2 comments. The first one is to second what has been said before. I feel so extremely grateful for being in Korea in these times. And I think this as a foreign community, and I in fact have talked to some of the foreign advisory board members, we should actually do something at some point saying thank you, Korea, for how have you been managing this pandemic. Not only Korean government, but Korean people in general. So that's one comment. The second one is rather detailed, but actually tackling on what has been said just now. I think in this time of pandemic, in which it's really difficult for everybody, but of course for Koreans to travel overseas, you have a pool of, let's say, ambassadors here in IFES who could give a sort of experience of traveling overseas for Koreans, each and every one of us from different countries, different backgrounds. So I just wonder this kind of, like a pilot project in which you could bring each day different person. I know you have been experiencing with the IFES Village Festival in past years. You have been doing amazing work in bridging together Koreans and foreigners, and I really want to, celebrate that as well. But one single thing could be, this type of, traveling without traveling, traveling without going outside IFES, through this wonderful variety of international residents that you have here in IFES. And that could be done in many different formats. I know it's just one little idea, but just wanted to say that. And thank you so much for organizing this event. I think this would be wonderful if we could have more of these forums, along the year as well. And really thank you for all the work that you're doing.
So that only works if, since you're from Spain, only if you bring Spanish wine over here for us to have that event, that virtual event for you. I think Annie was in front here first, and then Michael in back had a question.
Hi, my name is Annie Ham. I am a second-generation Korean American. I've lived in Songdo now for about 9 years. And I'm actually the traveling spouse. I have a unique experience where my children attend the Korean school. I actually homeschool now one, and one attends Korean school, so I'm just a total different niche. That's besides the point that I'm gonna make. First of all, thank you so much for this panel, for this event. I'm gonna piggyback off of a little bit what Chantel said. In the 9 years that I've been here, I've bumped into so many foreigners that have just come to Korea and have wanted to give back to the Korean community. And so what has birthed from that is a group that I have helped create is called the Giving Tree. And what that does is it helps the local orphanages in the area. And what we do is we try to raise money, we try to send Christmas presents, back to school presents, just to help support their group home style living. The problem is that because I am a foreigner, I cannot apply for like a nonprofit business ID. There are a lot of hurdles that I have to go through, even though I look the part. And so currently, I have a Korean that is assisting me with that process. So I'm excited to see what comes of that. But what I would love is that the universities at IGC, if there are clubs or if there are students that have a heart and a desire to want to give back and volunteer to these types of charitable type community events, I would love to work with those students because when you're here just for a few years, it's great to be able to give back to the country and the natives that you are living with. And so I hope that I can work with some of you guys, and if that's of interest of some of your students, I look forward to doing that with you guys as well.
I mean, that's a great idea, and I think that all universities here, I know George Mason has, and I think that also Utah SUNY, I'm not sure, but again, that we have active clubs for the students. They're always looking for more things to do, and I think that also works on what the student on the end said about the need to bridge the divide between Korean students and foreign students and try to make that work. I think that's a great idea, suggestion.
Yeah, Roland, let me just add to that. Annie, thank you. One of the things that we are encouraging our students to think about these days is how are you looking outside of yourself? Especially right now when times are really difficult, people are starting to feel isolated. And so what we're encouraging our students to think about is, let's look outside of ourselves and what am I doing to help somebody else today? And I think as students, and all of us generally, start thinking about how are we helping other people rather than just work. I mean, it's important to care about the challenges that we go through, no question about it. I think it's also helpful for us, at least for our mindset, to be thinking, how can we help the people around us? And that's an ethos that we're trying to build in our students right now through these clubs and these service opportunities. And so, University of Utah is more than happy to work with you. We can get you in contact with our club people and anybody else who has this idea of sort of working together and you want to engage the students that are here, both Korean and foreign students. Please reach out to us and we're more than happy to get that set up.
Hello, my name is Michael. I'm from Northern Ireland. I work at Ghent University. I've been in Songdo now around about 7 years. And I could comment on a few different things. Thank you to the speakers. I thought there were some great, interesting ideas and some specific proposals. I'd like to just add my kind of backing or support. I like the idea of Princess, and also Chantal mentioned it as well. And that is something, if we are talking to IFEZ, to talk about real kind of actionable physical things that we could see changing. We can talk a lot about cultural incidents and things that are happening, and we can propose some kind of regulation or policy, some proclamation that goes out. But I would like to really see some kind of tangible changes here in IFEZ facilities. I think a community center, a physical space that people can go to, but not to be confused with a global center. So a global center is really a place where people go to receive some service. A community center is as many people are expressing, is a place to go to contribute and also to be on a more equal footing. And out of a venture like that, which is tangible for IFEZ as leadership, then you could see a community start to grow and develop more and mature. And then we can see maybe development maybe of our own culture here. And then we have a place that, not only through sending messages in Facebook or in a forum like this, we have a continual place where knowledge and information, comments, a temperature reading is being gathered. I have filled in the survey many years. I'm not a big fan of the survey. I think it goes out and it does a particular job. I'm just talking about other tangible new methods that are slightly different, and I support that. And then I also want to join in a second comment, and that is, I've also lived other countries in Asia and also lived other cities in Korea. And actually, in comparison to other cities in Korea, we are quite international. But we do lack some diversity that many people who are living here in Songdo may still go out to places like Itaewon or whatever to actually get more diversity, which they can't get in Songdo International City. And so what I like to comment to IFEZ and to us as colleagues, that this is a really constructed community. Remember that IFEZ and its former planning partners chose what was going to be here. And I remember way back in the day with colleagues from Gale who were still here, and they talked about grit. It's one thing that they cannot program and cannot build in the community or cannot build in the physical environment. They cannot choose what kind of shops and units are going to take up the places here. And that has a big effect. So why people go to, for example, Itaewon in a very simple way, because there was originally workers who were there, who put money together, who bought a shop, who began to import and sell things. Why are they not doing it here? Because it's very expensive. And even from a Korean perspective, the food in Songdo is not so special. Songdo is franchise Changjam city. Yeah, I cannot get good food. My wife is from Jeollado. I cannot get the good food that I want to introduce people to because Songdo is overstocked with franchises. And so another small tangible example of bringing culture out is where's the mokori in Songdo, right? Where is the eating street? Something where we promote, to build on your idea, we promote that not just an event. We do the events and they're quite good, but actually change some tangible features in Songdo. So where is the street where we go for world food? You know, because I can leave Songdo and I can go out to Shihongshi and I can find where workers and foreign residents have set up you know, an African or an Asian restaurant from different parts, different cultures, but where can I find that in Songdo? And there's only a handful. Why? Because of the cost is prohibitive. And so something that's more tangible for IFES to work on could be, and I just suggested, is thinking about how to construct those elements which will help communities to grow. So something like a community center, a physical space that brings people together to meet, and something like it's only a suggestion, but something like promoting an area in which people will have a food market or a food zone, kind of hawker stall kind of thing. And again, it's not just say international food; it's Korean food too. And last one, we just throw it out there. Those kind of events that are really going to grow by themselves, that don't keep needing to be promoted by us or by IFES. That's something else. And something else, because we don't see those, say, mom and pop stores, you know, 할머니 식당, kind of grandmother's restaurant here in Songdo so much. We lose the culture of other Korean cities. So there's the Korean side that's missing. And so another thing that's kind of missing in Songdo is where do you go, for example, where's the kind of equivalent, say, farmer's market or something like that? Where's the, what did we have in the old days? We had something like the, we had once a month, IFES used to promote a stall in Central Park. Those of you who were here that time, you remember. But I always thought, hey, why isn't it a bit open? You know, in Bucheon City, they close the road around the park once a month, and they put up stalls, and people can come there from outside, and they set up a market, and then you could have Korean people equally with foreign cultures, and it's a bit more set up in a way that could grow by itself. Those are some thoughts and ideas.
Okay, great examples and ideas, Michael, as you always have. Farmers markets are a great place to get people from all around the world to interact in. I think that as diverse as our community is, but yet many here that live here don't know how diverse it may be, is farmers markets and those stalls ideas of, you know, once a weekend, once every other weekend or once a month might be a great idea to bring people together. Have some food and drinks, make some makgeolli as you've talked about, and enjoy a couple of drinks as well. We're 5 minutes over, and I think that's actually great because normally it's these type of events where people don't speak, and therefore we have too much time left over. So this time we're over by 5 minutes. I think that's perfect for us, and hopefully we'll have more opportunities in the future to do this again. I'll turn this over now to our lovely host to finish it up for us.
Okay, based on your various suggestions and made today, IFES will make an effort to improve foreign resident environment for foreigners in IFES. Thank you for joining us, and we appreciate speakers, and moderator, and panelists for your participation today. And we will wrap up today's event here. Thank you for your attendance. TK?